Now, a lot of people who have blood glucose regulation problems find that when they first wake up in their morning, their blood glucose is either already elevated or their blood glucose is rising and it's rising quickly. And they can see it if they're wearing a continuous glucose monitor. All of a sudden they're like, oh man, my glucose is at 110 and it's got either a single arrow up or a double arrow up. And so they have to either dose insulin without eating any food, or they have to do something to sort of counteract this elevation in blood glucose first thing in the morning. So can you give a little bit more insight here into why does blood glucose rise first thing in the morning in response to this cortisol release?
Yeah, what's very interesting, when we look at studies on cortisol and stress, they have found that if people have disrupted sleep, they have a higher set point of cortisol and more rapid rise in cortisol during the morning hours. And so if you're not getting adequate sleep, your body reads that as stress. And the stress response is to release cortisol and catecholamines, which leaves you at a higher starting point and a more rapid rise in the morning. For people that have reduced stress by getting a better night's sleep, they tend to have a lower set point for cortisol and a slower rise in the morning. So one of the suggestions that I always make to people first is, let's really focus on assuring that you're getting to sleep on time, that you're sleeping all night, and you're getting up in the morning. And then secondarily, let's focus on any stress that we can reduce during the day. And I say reduce because I thought about this just recently. We often say stress management, but we really don't want to manage stress. We want to reduce stress. And so I'm trying to help them reduce stress during the day because that will also carry over into the night. So they have a higher set point of cortisol at nighttime. What's interesting too, Cyrus, they took 21 healthy volunteers and they put them into a study where they disrupted their sleep for 39 nights in a row. And they found that group of people had a 32% decreased insulin response and decreased metabolic rate in just 39 nights. And so these are healthy volunteers. And so for people that are living with diabetes, that disruption can cause even more profound impacts. But the good news is that with just 9 nights of improved sleep, those markers return to normal. So it tells us that the body, wants to rebound back to its normal cycle. It wants to restore normal function. And if we just give it what it needs, it will do the work to help repair and regenerate.
Yeah, I've actually read some of these studies which show that even a single night of disrupted sleep can elicit a response with either a higher fasting blood glucose or a reduced ability to secrete insulin when you consume carbohydrate-rich food. So it's interesting that you're saying that not only does that happen in the short term, but that if that pattern exists over the long term and that turns into 10, 20, 30, 40 days of sleep deprivation, then the problem can compound on itself. But the nice thing is that you can actually reverse that by, again, getting restorative sleep and making sure that that becomes a consistent habit.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And even in people with type 1 diabetes, the studies show that a single night of disrupted sleep increases insulin resistance in people living with type 1 diabetes. Just that one night. So it's an amazing impact of that single night of disrupted sleep.
Yeah. And I mean, living in the body of an individual with type 1 diabetes, I can tell you that without question. I mean, there are certain times where I'm just not able to get a full 8 hours of restorative sleep. And I see it the next day in my blood glucose. Not only is my fasting blood glucose slightly higher than it normally would be, but I do find that I have to inject a little bit more insulin throughout the following day in order to control my blood glucose. It could be 2 units, it could be 5 units, but the simple concept is that my insulin sensitivity has decreased, which means that my demand for insulin has increased. And the nice thing is that living in the body of somebody who doesn't have functioning pancreatic beta cells, I can measure that. But in your situation, in those situations of those who are not injecting insulin, you don't have a way of measuring insulin resistance. There's no magic device that you can buy, which basically says, hey, Scott, you're 25% more insulin resistant today than you were yesterday. But the same phenomenon, which happens in a person with type 1, is also happening in an individual who doesn't have type 1.
That's exactly right. And the studies show even in our fat cells or adipocytes that with a disrupted sleep in healthy men and women, the adipocytes develop increased inflammation and insulin resistance and decreased beta cell function in healthy individuals. And so if we carry that over to people with, type 2 diabetes with beta cells, we can see that, that deprivation of sleep really carries over to have a significant impact long term.
Okay, now out of curiosity, do you know what the specific reason is why beta cells are affected by poor sleep? Is it that they have a reduced ability to manufacture and secrete insulin, like they actually just can't make as much? Or do they have a more difficult time sensing glucose in the blood, so they don't know exactly how much to manufacture to control your blood glucose? Do you have some idea here as to what is the state of the research and knowledge in the scientific community?
From what I've read, Cyrus, I don't think they've identified the exact mechanism for the disruption. I think everything you've suggested is true, plus inflammation. We know that, inflammation impacts beta cell function, and with the elevated oxidative stress and inflammatory markers that we see with sleep disruption. We also know that, stress impacts beta cells with the, catecholamines and cortisol response too. So your body always interprets sleep deprivation as a stressor. And so it responds to sleep deprivation as it would any other stressor, and with elevated catecholamines and cortisol. So that has a profound effect on every system in the body.
Gotcha. So let's go backwards, actually, multiple minutes before. You had mentioned that when somebody when they have a single night of disrupted sleep, or in shift workers, as an example, that they have an increased desire to eat carbohydrate-rich food the next day. So we, just to be very clear about the types of carbohydrate-rich food that we're likely talking about, is that we advocate that people eat whole carbohydrate-rich foods with fruits, starchy vegetables, legumes, and whole grains, and that becomes the foundation of your diet, because that's actually the most effective way to maintain insulin sensitivity or reverse insulin resistance. But I think what you're saying is that when you have disrupted sleep, then that increases your desire to eat refined carbohydrate-rich foods. Am I putting words in your mouth, or is that what you were trying to insinuate?
No, that's the perfect distinction. That's exactly right. It is refined carbohydrates, because, as you said, it's the whole carbohydrates of plant foods that optimize health. So you're exactly right. And what's happening at night is several things. It's the elevated cortisol and stress response that drives carbohydrate craving. There's actually a spike of prolactin that happens overnight with normal sleep architecture. And if we miss that prolactin spike, that's also related to the craving of refined carbohydrates or sugars. The prolactin is also important for rebooting the immune system, for metabolism, for regeneration as well. So, that's another one of those hormones that's really critical. And then, the inflammation, the disruption of the microbiome, all these things lead to that trend towards craving sugar, fat, and salt from refined foods that will ultimately circle back to drive inflammation, insulin resistance, especially when we're eating fatty refined foods, because they deposit in the muscles with the intramyocellular fat causing disrupted insulin signaling as well. So it becomes this really vicious loop of sleep deprivation, disrupted architecture, and hormones that drive the reward centers in the brain to crave more refined carbohydrates that we eat, and we often eat them late at night, which causes inflammation, insulin resistance, and sleep disruption. And the chronobiology is really interesting. If we eat late, it actually increases our stomach acid twofold. So when we go to bed, we have more stomach acid, more susceptibility to reflux and disrupted sleep. And so we don't sleep as well. We get a bad night's sleep, and then we compensate with caffeine, and the caffeine disrupts the adenosine receptors, which impacts sleep architecture, and we get caught in this really deadly cycle that ultimately drives insulin resistance, inflammation, and a slow downward trend in the management of a disease.
So it's a multi-system dysfunction, like we talked about earlier, where it becomes it's almost like a trifecta that just sort of spins out of control. And the only way to restore that, correct me if I'm wrong, is to develop very consistent sleep hygiene that enables you to get to sleep potentially earlier and stay asleep for a longer period of time so that you can allow your brain and the rest of your body to get into that deep sleep state and stay there for as much time as possible.